Hey everyone, yeah, it's a little different. I have my phone connected, or not connected, but kind of wedged in the top and the bottom of my vinyl player. But I wanted to come on here in a bit of a response to Jeff Siegel, the Seg Daddy's OTRS video he did recently. He uploaded recently, talking about the whole Bron, what is it? Bron breaker situation. And I just wanted to come out here and address this to Jeff and anybody else that's wondering the same thing he is. Like, I mean, I understand where, you guys are coming from about the fact that this is Rick Steiner's son. This is Scott Steiner's nephew. He looks, like a combination, a fusion of both Rick and Scott, facially and, and muscular and all that, well, facial wise and muscular wise and even personality wise. And that, he sounds like a Steiner. He sounds like, Scott in some ways, with a little bit of his dad mixed in there. But like I said in the video I did on this previously, I talked about the fact that basically this is just WWE trying to market a name that they can use at any time. I mean, you go back to the whole Scott Hall, Kevin Nash situation 25 years ago, and that didn't really sit well with them because a lot of people perceived that Razor Ramon and Diesel were in WCW just by the mannerisms and all that. So that was something that, WWF took to heart as a hard lesson of, hey, when we let these guys or gals go, we got to make sure that they don't act identical to their WWE personas. Thus, this is what, thus the reason why they suddenly put and implemented a lot of these decisions that they made of, okay, this person needs a name, or we need to put this person under a mask, or we need to put face paint on this person, and try our best to avoid any acknowledgement to who they are connected to in the business, family-wise or whatever the case may be. And again, it's all about intellectual property, property, if you will, IPs for short, that, WWE does this, or any business does this, because they want to have ownership of it, and that's the truth. They want to have ownership of the name, and they want to be able to, as well as ownership of the look, and be able to utilize it whenever they want. Again, going back to 25 years ago, a good example of this, as I mentioned in the previous video, is when they took Glenn Jacobs, who would become Kane, who was formerly Isaac Yankem before this, and they took the other guy known as Big Titan in Japan and on the independents and all that, brought them in, and basically, gave them the gimmicks of Razor Ramon and Diesel. And JR even said on commentary, I think it was during the pay-per-view, the Survivor Series, that they have just as much right to, to be Razor and Diesel as anybody else in WWE. Basically, when he said that line, he was making a statement that, they have the right to don the gimmicks, to be the characters, as much as anybody else in the company would have the opportunity to do so. And again, the reason they did that was to prove a point. Like, yeah, the original guys that portrayed them, they're not here with us, and we'll even clear that up. We'll even say, yeah, this isn't Scott Hall, this isn't Kevin Nash. These are two entirely younger guys that could carry the gimmicks for a lot longer. And basically, by doing that, they wanted to prove the point of, we own the name, we own the gimmick, and we can put it on to anybody whenever we choose. Which is why, when you take a look at Bron Breakker, Rex Steiner that is, and you take a look at even someone like Von Wagner, Cal Bloom, you say to yourself, well, they look in a way like the fathers. They look a little bit like, let's say, their uncles or any other relatives that were in the business. What's the big deal of not acknowledging it? And the thing is, it's about giving them their own identity that they could keep, that they would have the intellectual property of, and to be, that in the future they could utilize whenever they want. So, for example, as I said in the other video, Jeff, let's say Rex Steiner leaves WWE in the future, goes to, let's say, AEW or Impact Wrestling, or even to Japan, and becomes Rex Steiner. WWE can use the Bron Breakker name and say, okay, well, we don't have Rex Steiner anymore. Who can we get that looks identical to him? And they could pick somebody out of one of the up-and-coming, recruitment classes and say, okay, this guy looks similar to him. Let's make this guy Bron Breakker, and let's make up some story that he had plastic surgery. And there you go. And that's all they would have to do. The same with Cal Bloom and his Von Wagner thing. If Cal Bloom decides to leave in the future and go elsewhere, they could say, okay, let's find another near 7-foot guy, and basically somebody we look at as the next Edge, and let's make him Von Wagner. And they would look and probably find somebody out there with a similar identity and say, okay, we could train this guy and he'll be our new Von Wagner, and we can make up maybe the same story of, hey, he got into an accident and he had plastic surgery. That's it. That's all they'd have to do. The truth is, unfortunately, Jeff, that as much as it would make sense for them to acknowledge him as Rex Steiner or Bron Steiner or Bronson Steiner or whatever, or Bronson Rex Steiner, if you will, because that's his real name, as much as that would all make sense, it's all about money to them. It's all about how much money can we make off the gimmick, for as long as this guy has it, and how much more money can we make after he leaves once we decide to either give it to somebody else or just make action figures and keep the character in the game, as just Bron Breakker. How much money can we make? It's about owning the name, the intellectual property of the name. So basically, like I said, if Rex Steiner was to leave and go to Japan, go to AEW, go to Impact, go to MLW, it's mainly the fact that deep down, this is all being done, Jeff. This is all being done because all they want, WWE that is to own the name, so they could utilize it any which way they want, or pass it on to anybody else they feel looks identical to Rex Steiner, and then give it to them and maybe come up with some story, like I said, that is like basically goes along the lines of, oh, he had plastic surgery and this is why he's got this new look and everything. They can do that, and they can legally, and they be able to legally get away with it. That's why. That's why, they get, what I'm trying to say is, they could do that, and they would legally get away with it, because the reason why is they would own the property, and there's nothing we or anybody else, not even Rex Steiner, could do about it. So the sad truth is that's why guys like him and Cal Bloom and anybody else is getting these new names. It's not because, WWE doesn't want to be associated with some of these guys. In the case of Scott Steiner, that is basically truth. And Rick Steiner is unfortunately guilty by association, by basically, making him this new person, even though everybody knows who he really is. It allows them to create a new identity for him. It allows him to become his own individual. That basically, as you put it, people in the future in 45 to 60,000 seat stadiums or arenas can chant, Bron's going to break you, which, is a catchy saying when you think about it. But the reality is it's all about the intellectual property that, they would be owning by giving him that name. Because then they could utilize it any which way they want or pass it on to anybody they want. So that's why, unfortunately, the sad truth is, that is why, unfortunately, like I said, the sad truth is they gave him that name. It'd be kind of like, Jeff, if you went to work with them and they said, okay, what would you like to be? Okay, what names can we come up with? And you suggest, well, I usually go by the Schleg Daddy. How about that? And they'd be like, yeah, that's a good name, but we can't call you the Schleg Daddy Jeff Siegel, can we? And you could be like, well, it sounds good to me. And they say like, yeah, but we need something that's a combination of the two. And maybe they'd come up with a name that I gave your creative wrestler that I made I made as a representation of you in my copy of the WWE 2K19 game, and they could just call you, oh, I know, let's call you Jeff S. Daddy. That way, it's a combination of your real name and a combination of your YouTube name or your your nickname or whatever. And you'd probably be like, well, it sounds good, but why would you want to call me that? And they may or may not tell you why, and if they don't, over time, by talking to some people, you'd realize, oh, that's why they gave me the Jeff S. Daddy name, so they can own it. You see what I'm saying? Even though people would know you as the Schleg Daddy, Jeff Siegel of OTRS Central, them making you Jeff S. Daddy would be their way of saying, we own the name now. We can do whatever we want with it. Money, money, money. Or, let's pick out this random guy and make him the new Jeff S. Daddy. That's it. The same with just Alex, Deluxe Man. Alex, let's say, gets hired by WWE, and he could say, well, you could just call me just Alex, or you can call me Deluxe Man. And they can be like, yeah, that sounds good and everything, but, but we need something new, more catchy, more that's in tune with what we got. Oh, I know. How about Deluxe Alex, or Alex Deluxe? There you go. And the reason they would give him the either name of Deluxe Alex or Alex Deluxe is that way they own the property. Even though people would know who he is because of his time on YouTube, giving him the name of Deluxe Alex or Alex Deluxe would be their way of saying, we own the property. We own that name. We can give it to anybody we want. The same with Jason Solomon, the Solomonster. Let's say he wants to be known as the Solomonster, Jason Solomon. They'd be like, yeah, that sounds good and everything, but we need something different. We need something that fits our motif. I know, we'll call you Jason Monster. Why? The IP. That way they can do whatever they want with it. You get what I'm saying? I can tell, people know me as BW Rosas here on YouTube. I signed with them, and I can say, well, you can call me Brian Walmer or BW Rosas. People know me by that. And they'd be like, yeah, but we need something different. I know, we'll call you Brian Rosas. And, and to make sure they would have the intellectual property, they take my I out of my first name and put a Y and say, you're Brian Rosas. There you go. All because they want to own the name, the IP. That is why they would do that. That's the reason they did it with Bron Breakker, with Rex Steiner. That's why they gave him the Bron Breakker name. That's why they gave Cal Bloom the Von Wagner name. Because of IP. That way, if anything happens in the future, they can give it to anybody else or utilize it any which way they want. But that's basically why, Jeff. That's basically why. So, I just wanted to come on here and give a response to you, and hopefully you respond back if you get the time. But if any of you are but for the rest of you that are watching, I should say, let me know what your thoughts are. Comment below, like the video, live chat during the premiere, check out the Teespring store, check out my podcast, BW Roses Discussion, and all your favorite audio podcast affiliates except for Pandora. As well as check me out on Vimeo with BW Roses. And that's all I'm going to say, guys. So till next time, God bless. Take care. I am out.